There is a person that God is sculpting, and you just have to be responsive to the way that He is shaping you. The thing is, a lot of people in life, they'll start with high standards, dreams, something that they want to accomplish, and then there is a slow degradation of those standards over time. Are you allowing things in your life that at one time you said, I will never allow that in my life? Welcome to the Serve One podcast. My name is Philip. I'm the campus pastor here at Elevation Matthews. The Serve One podcast is all about helping you grow and become everything that God created you to be. So growing as a leader, growing as a spouse, growing as a parent, growing as a coworker, wherever that would be, I want to help you grow and become everything that God has created you to be. The truth is, God sees you as something that you are not yet in person, right? We are all living in a space where we need to grow and become who He created us to be. Now, it is up to us whether or not we will engage with the growth that we need to walk through in order to become who God created us to be. So last week, I talked about having a growth mindset, and I came at it from the angle of I accomplished something that was really big. I hit my goals, and I was very happy about being able to accomplish that thing. However, I was immediately very aware of areas of my life or areas of my physical fitness. That's what we were talking about last week, where I still could improve. There's something about the individual who has a mindset that naturally gravitates towards, I need to grow. And I'm not talking about beating yourself up and getting down on yourself. I think we need to shift away from the mindset of always looking at our failures as a negative thing and starting to reframe that to be like, oh, I might have done well in this area, and I failed in this area, but get excited because that's an area that you have now identified as a space for growth. The danger is that many of us fall into areas of shame, disappointment, and we linger on those areas where we have failed, but I don't think that that's what God wants us to do. I think God potentially puts us in situations where we do fail so that we can identify the areas we need to grow. So we talked about having a growth mindset. I'm going to go on a little bit of a series here on areas of our life where we can grow. Today, I want to talk about growing in your integrity. Grow in your integrity. We oftentimes think about integrity in the way of saying this is something that somebody has or this is something that somebody doesn't have. And we put them in those two categories where this is an upright person who has an integrity. We would say things like, this is a person that they are the same in every setting that they are in. And then we'll look at somebody else and say, oh, I don't trust that person. They do not have integrity. And over time, we keep them in that category and we never trust them. Well, why can't people grow? Why can't you grow in the area of integrity? The thing is, we are so much more likely to give ourselves grace for those areas. Yes, we might see our failures. Yes, we might be aware of the areas that we need to grow, but we don't tend to keep ourselves in those categories if we are the type of individual that wants to grow. When we start to grow and we have that type of mindset, we start to see ourselves as something different. We start to see ourselves as a person of integrity, yet oftentimes we want to keep people in categories where it's either you have it or you don't have it. Well, why can't people grow? You know that you can grow. And if you're in a space right now where you've been trying to do something for a long period of time and you're like, actually, Philip, I'm not sure that I can grow. I'm not sure that I can accomplish this thing or that I can get over whatever it is that you're trying to get over, that hurdle in your life. I'm here to tell you, you can. With the help of God and the Spirit working in your life, you can overcome anything that is in your way currently. There is a person that God is sculpting, and you just have to be responsive to the way that he is shaping you, the way that he is chipping away, the way that he is molding you so that you can be who God called you to be. So grow in your integrity. The thing is, a lot of people in life, they'll start with high standards, dreams, something that they want to accomplish. And then there is a slow degradation of those standards over time. We start to allow certain things in our life that maybe at one time we felt like I would never do that. But over a period of time, we slowly start to feel like, oh, that's okay. I can take that on. I can allow that. And there's a slow decline in our standards. There's a slow decline in our integrity. And some of you might say, oh, no. I would never do that. I would never allow things in my life, and I would never take action on things that I feel like are below me, or that I feel like are sin, or I feel like are not right. I would never do that. Well, I'm going to give you some examples here where if you feel like you are better than these individuals, that's incredible. I would say you're probably at the start of declining towards something that you never intended to be, because I would say you have a major blind spot in your life. Why can't we be the type of individuals who grow in our integrity, where our integrity is something that is increasing, where we take it out of the categories of have and have not, but we realize, oh, this is actually an area of character in my life that I can grow. Is this something that you're striving to grow in your life? And can I encourage you right now that it should be something that you are trying to grow in your life? For a moment, let's just talk about David. And there are a lot of examples in the Bible that I could think of and bring up very quickly of people who at one point had high standards of integrity, and over time, those things, based off of circumstance, based off of the situation that they are in or the people around them, over time, they allow those standards to decline. And so David, who is chosen by God, who has the heart of God, who is anointed by God to be king, he steps in, and initially he's the one who is conquering. He's slaying giants. He is an extremely honorable person, and he will not hurt Saul, even though God has turned his back on Saul and he is no longer God's anointed. David is God's anointed, and David says, I will never hurt the man that was the anointed of God. And so he has great integrity. Well, over time, he gets to a place where he starts to act in a way that is not the way that God intended for him to act. He puts himself in position where he starts to act as though he has arrived. He becomes settled in his successes. And then he starts to think, oh, well, maybe I can allow a little bit of this or a little bit of that, or maybe because of who I am at this point, that'll be okay for me to approach, and that'll be okay. And maybe I don't have to actually step up to that standard and hold that line and be responsible for that thing that God anointed me as king to be responsible for, to go after, to really hold the line for the kingdom of God. Maybe I can reduce my standard and thus reduce my integrity, because that exposed him to situations that would entice him, that would pull him in a direction that God never intended for him, and he would end up committing adultery and then murdering a person. Now, David, I'm sure when he was young, never thought that he would be in a position where he would actually murder someone just in an attempt to hide his sin. And certainly he felt shame about this. Certainly he understood that he needed to change, but instead he tries to hide it. I would say something happened in David's life where he walked through a slow decline in his integrity, a slow decline in who he knew God created him to be, and he started to chase after things that maybe he felt like were going to be okay for him. We see this in our society all the time, where people reach places of power and think that they can use their position now to indulge in whatever it is that they feel inside of themselves. And if it's inside of them, it must be who they were created to be. And because it must be who they were created to be, they should certainly chase after those things and indulge in them. No. God actually calls us to abstain from certain things so that we can grow and become who He created us to be, not who we feel like we're created to be. There's a major difference there. Are you chasing after becoming who God created you to be? Or are you chasing after the things that make you feel comfortable, that make you feel good, that entice you? Which one will lead you? We're all being led by certain things. Which one will you be led by? Can you shift that and become who God created you to be? So here's a few questions that I'd like for you to wrestle with in order to truly understand, am I sliding in my integrity or am I growing in my integrity? And the first one would be, am I allowing something in my life today that at one time I said I would never do? Am I allowing something in my life today that at one time I said I would never do? And I'm not trying to negate that we all have room for growth in areas of strength and in areas of understanding, becoming enlightened to ideas and different concepts. We oftentimes have belief systems that we feel very, very adamant about those belief systems. And the truth is, because of us holding on to those belief systems so tightly, we can't even see that God is trying to expose us to different ideas, different belief systems. This is a good example of this would be when Jesus shows up on the scene in Jerusalem and he's flipping tables and he's going to the religious leaders and saying, why can't you see who I am? It's because you've held on to your traditions so tightly that you cannot see the Savior. And I'm not exactly talking about situations like that. We should all be open to ideas and open to, okay, God, what are you causing me to wrestle with? What are the ideas maybe that I've developed that need to shift and need to change in my life? But more so what I'm talking about is if at one time you recognize, hey, I have an addiction to alcohol, and you stopped drinking altogether because you knew you couldn't stop at one, well, after you lived that life for a period of time, are you now starting to drink again thinking, oh, I'm strong now. I can handle this. This is something that I can do. I wonder, and I'm not saying that drinking is bad. I'm not saying that drinking is a sin. I'm not saying that you need to withhold from that. I'm just saying if you know that you're the type of person who has a propensity towards becoming an alcoholic, what situations are you allowing in your life? You created a belief system that, oh, I cannot handle this. And so after a period of time, are you starting to indulge in the thing that you once said, that's not good for me. That's not healthy for me. But now that we've progressed past it and you start to slide into a belief pattern that is different than you once had conviction for, are you allowing things in your life that at one time you said, I will never allow that in my life? The second question, do I regularly find myself justifying my actions? The truth is, God has placed individuals around all of us that can kind of rub against us as iron sharpens iron, that can point out maybe some blind spots in our life. And if you consistently find yourself in conversations where you're justifying your actions, you're justifying the ways that you do certain things or the reason that you do certain things or the things that you always feel as though you have to defend the reason for doing the thing that you're doing, when a lot of people around you are trying to help you see that may not be healthy for you. You probably have a blind spot where you need to examine that thing and realize, oh, this is not just an issue of action or an issue of the way I'm operating. This is actually an issue of integrity. where I have allowed myself to slide into behaviors that feel like they're okay, they feel like they are good, but those things are not good for you. And we can often justify these types of things by saying, oh, I need to provide for my family, so I have got to work a lot in order to do that. And we find ourselves working way more than we should be working. And we find ourselves pouring ourselves into that. And we feel as though we have to always be on because we're finding our identity in that thing. And we're neglecting so much more in our life because we've gotten way out of balance. It seems as though something that was good in a moment that we needed to chase after has now become the idol. And we're sacrificing our integrity because we're now justifying the action. We're justifying the thing rather than who God has created us to be. And the final question is there an area of my life where if I raise the standard, I would be closer to who God created me to be? Is there something right now that you can identify that is maybe something you've been wrestling with for a period of time where you're like, man, I know I shouldn't be doing that thing, but it's fun. And I know if I put that away, I would actually become closer to the person that God created me to be. But I don't know if I'm ready to get rid of that. I don't know if I'm ready to put that down. I don't know if I'm ready to step away from that group of friends. I don't know if I can do that. There'll be a lot of pressure. There'll be a lot of tension. I don't know if I can take that step. What I want you to do right now is not go ahead and take that step if you're struggling with it. Not go ahead and muster up the courage to do the thing. What I want you to do right now is go and write down what that thing is. Wrestle with it. And I need you to identify what it is that you need to grow in. Identify the area of integrity in your life that if you stepped up and did that thing, it would be different. And then I want you to write down, if you did that thing, how would your life change? What would be different about the way you could operate and how you would grow and the person that you would become if you could move beyond the thing that you're holding onto? I want you to grow. I want you to have a growth mindset, and I want you to grow in your integrity. Remember, this is not a have and have not situation. You are not a person of integrity and then a person who doesn't have integrity. This is a spectrum, and we are all on levels of things that we will choose to honor and maybe things that we choose that we can get away with. Well, what would it look like to grow in your integrity and become who God created you to be? I'm going to be talking about this over the next few weeks. We're going to identify a few different areas that we can grow in, and I want to speak to those specific places and ask you some questions to help you grow and become everything that God has created you to be. If you have questions or things that you'd like me to specifically speak to in this series, go ahead, message me, leave that in the comments, DM me on Instagram or wherever you would like to. I would love to speak to the tensions that you are facing and help you grow. Like, subscribe, and if this content is helpful for you, make sure that you are sharing it with somebody. Copy the link and text it to them, because my desire is to help people grow and become everything God has created them to be.